Welcome to the Everygirl podcast. I am so excited to talk to you today, and I have so many great questions for you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here. I think this is going to be a good time, some great combo, and yeah, I'm excited.
Yay. So I always love to go back to someone's childhood to understand who they are, how they got to where they are now. So would young Lexi be surprised by your life right now?
I think 110% yes. There's parts of me I knew when I was younger. I never knew exactly what I wanted to do, but I wanted to do something that involved helping people or working with kids. I grew up wanting to be a teacher. At one point, I wanted to do social work. At one point, I wanted to be a vet. I never really wanted to do the medical field. Blood always kind of intimidated me and scared me, but I wanted to work with people, maybe do therapy. At one point, I looked into like sports physical therapy, which is interesting because now I'm like, I don't think I would do that at all. But I I knew deep down in my core, I think my purpose and my path has always been geared towards people and just being around people, talking to people. So now that I'm doing social media, it's kind of weird because I have this like that still feels like my purpose. And I feel like what I try to do with this platform is to reach people and to help people in any way that I can. So I think younger me is like, well, this isn't the way that I saw it going at all, but you're still doing what I always wanted to do. So it just depends on the day, you know?
Yeah,
But
that
but we
makes
definitely she's proud, that's for sure, I think.
I think she would be. It's always so interesting when there's like I always said that there's like that common thread through everyone's life where it's like when they
Mhm.
the time that they were young, it might be totally different what you're doing now than what you expected, but there is that common thread. So would you say that thread for you is like that connection to people and that helping people?
Definitely. It's like the invisible string theory, but not between two people, just between like your younger self and your future self. And I think that there's always something guiding us, whatever you believe that to be. Something is leading you along your path towards your purpose. And I think the older we get, the more we kind of figure it out each and every day. Like I've gone through so many different chapters of my life, and in the moment, none of them were interconnected. Like I did a military program in high school, but then I did beauty pageants. And like at the time, those were like two completely opposite things. But looking back, like there were so many deeper ties and connections that made those two things similar and helped me become who I am now, like all with the same purpose in mind, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting because yeah, it seems so like eclectic on
Hmm.
paper, but it all makes sense knowing you and knowing what you've done that you have found that common thread in so many different things in your life makes so
Yeah.
much sense. And
Thank
at what point did
you.
you start saying like I want to start sharing on social media? How did that come to be?
So it really just started out for fun. Like I was always the girl in high school who was like, let's go take pictures. Let's go make a video. All my friends were like, no, Lexi, not more pictures, please. But I always was like, let's go do a photo shoot. Let's get dressed up. Let's go out to lunch. So I think like it's always been in my nature to be that girl who just wants to document life. Like I made videos in college that I never shared anywhere just for like me and my friends to look back on. Same thing with high school. I would make like little montages of me and my best friend's whole childhood. I honestly want to go through and find some of those things, but I always loved doing that. And then college came around and TikTok started popping up. So I would just make random TikToks, like trying to go viral. That was just what I wanted to do. For some reason, I thought it would be fun in college, but that never really worked out while I was in school. Like when I was making those videos, I would just do random trends and see what would happen. But then I came home because COVID happened. So everybody moved home from college. I was spending every day outside with my family. Like we were honestly having a pretty good time during quarantine because we all got to be together, and my family and I are super close, and I live in Florida. So the weather was great. So basically, I was like, "Oh, I'm doing all this during the day. I'm working out at home. I'm making these really good meals. Why don't I start sharing like what I'm doing?" So I started posting day in the life's outdoor workout videos, what I eat in a days, and they just kind of started to gain some traction. And I was like, this is really fun and this is really cool. So at first, I was kind of eating it up because I was just like, wait, this is so fun. And my adrenaline would get going. And I love to create because I love seeing growth. But the longer that I was creating, the more I realized how much I actually had a passion for sharing things, whether that be through inspiring somebody to cook a meal or inspiring somebody to enjoy their meals and their food and their life, and inspiring somebody to go outside, go jump in the pool, whatever it may be. I started to realize there was so much I loved about it. So I just kept posting, and I've taken it now through pretty much every chapter of my life. And it's been really, really cool to see the different ways my content changes throughout how I grow, what different phases of my life I go through. So really just started for fun, but I think it stuck around for a reason.
Mm. It's so interesting hearing you explain like how you got started and how your career came to be, because I always like to identify, like, obviously so many people would love to pop off on TikTok and would love to become successful in any lane. And so for the people that actually do become successful, I always want to know, like, what is it that made them successful whereas all these other people are trying and haven't been able to get there? So do you feel like your secret sauce, it sounds like just hearing you talk, was that combination of like loving the creation, loving the
Hmm.
creativity that you could express, and also that, like you were talking about earlier, the connection to people. And that's what kind of shone through and allowed you to separate yourself from other content creators at the time.
100%. I think the real key to growth on any platform is to truly keep it as authentic as you can. And I feel like that's kind of what a lot of people say. It's like a cliche saying, like being consistent and being yourself. But it is proven to be so true, especially for me. I notice now, even when I'm creating and I see, like, oh, all this is trending, like I haven't been paying attention to my growth too much. Like, let me try to do a little bit more of that. I can see automatically that my content isn't as me as I want it to be. And you don't get that genuine growth and you don't build that personal connection with your audience, which I think is so important for anybody who wants to, whether it's get into this field to do it for fun, to do it as a side hustle, to make it a full time career. There's so much opportunity within it. But if you don't do it as the realest version of you, you won't see that growth and it won't be consistent. So I really think that just loving, like you said, loving what you're sharing, doing it because you really truly want to, and building the connection with your audience so that you feel like you're creating for your friends. Like, I see everybody that follows me is like a genuine friend to me. And whenever I get to meet people out and in public, it's like we've known each other for years because we've shared so much of our lives with each other, even just through the comment sections. Like, I've learned what so many of my followers have gone through. I love to talk to people in my DMs. Like, building that community, I think, is what also helps people grow a lot because it keeps you so encouraged to continue to share, because it's like you build this big friend group. It's actually a wild concept to think about. Like, every once in a while I'm like, oh my gosh, my best friends are like living all over the world. It's crazy. But consistency, authenticity, and community, I think, are the keys to really seeing the growth that you would want to see.
Those are such good tips. I feel like authenticity is really becoming the new currency. Like, it's
Hmm.
so rare now to find authenticity, and people are so
100%.
used to seeing like the artificial curated online, that whether you are a content creator or whether you are showing up authentically at the office or with friendships, I feel like that is so rare these days that it's now becoming such an important skill that really will
Definitely.
draw people to you if you are able to be authentic.
Yeah, and I think it really it's a weird time in the world where so many of us are we consume so much media. We consume, and I guess this is weird for me to say as somebody who does influencing as my career, we consume what so many other people are doing that we tend to forget to pour into ourselves and like really figure out who we are. And I think that, like, some of my biggest advice for anybody ever is to know yourself, because it's really hard to be an authentic version of yourself if you don't quite know yourself yet. Like, it leaves a lot of room to be so impressionable, to just kind of become what you see other people being. And that's very different than being inspired by another person's, clothing style. Like, that's a different story. But when we can really know who we are at our core, like, know what are the things that actually make us happy? What are the things that we stand for, our morals, our values, all of those things, like, we need to kind of know them about ourselves before we can show up as that authentic version. And I think that that's why for a while in my life, I didn't even know what the real me was. I didn't know how to act in certain settings. My social anxiety used to be a lot worse. And I think so much of that was because I didn't know who I was. So I guess, like, when we are trying to be authentic, like, we have to make sure we know ourselves at our core, and it makes it all so much easier and it puts a lot less pressure on it. I hope that made
Mm.
sense. My brain
It
was kind of
totally
going on a line, and then it went all over.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I think that's such an important point, is like knowing yourself, like knowing who you are, what you believe in. Is, to me, I look at like confidence, and we all talk about like how to get more confidence. And it's such a goal to be confident. And a lot
Mhm.
of people, myself included, look at someone like you and think, oh, Lexi must be so confident. She seems so confident, so self assured. And I'm curious, like your response to that, to people thinking that you're confident. But also, I think that like 50% of confidence is just knowing self. It's not about like loving
Mhm.
everything, it's about just knowing you. So I totally agree with you. So, what are those factors that you feel like make you confident? Whether it's, and I'm curious because I know some people will say, like, it's funny you think I'm confident because I don't feel that
Mhm.
way all the time. So, I'm curious your
Yeah.
response to people being like, you seem like you have it all together and you're so confident. But I'm also curious, like, what tips you have that you figured out over your life and your career being public. What
Mm.
are those tips for confidence that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, so I feel like I could take this in so many different directions. So I'm gonna hope that my brain stays on one line and doesn't go on 7 paths at once. That's one thing
But
I
if
struggle
we
with.
got to go all the lines, that's totally fine too. We're down for
We're gonna
that.
hit every stop. But I think that one, my first reaction is it's crazy to me that people think I'm confident because sometimes and a lot of the time under the surface, I struggle with so much like doubt and insecurity upon myself. I get really, really anxious a lot. And these are all different phases I go through in my life. Like there could be one week where I feel really good and really secure, proud of what I create, proud of what I share. And another week I can feel like I am doing nothing, reaching nothing. I feel worthless, stupid, and ugly, which is horrible things to say about myself, but it's not something I'm afraid to admit as a human. A lot of us go through those kind of things. So when people say that, I'm like, girl, little do you know. But I do have tips I've learned over the past years of like how to pull myself out of those moments where I'm doubting myself and who I am. Um, I think the first step is literally faking it till you make it. Like that is one thing that helps me a lot is just looking in the mirror and not being afraid to say my affirmations and let myself feel what I'm going through. Like never invalidating my feelings because I think the second we start doing that is the second that we build this big ball inside of us that eventually explodes and it breaks and then we really really go into a dark place. So always validating what you're going through and what you're feeling and letting your insecurities letting them happen, but then slowly kind of pushing them out of the way by replacing them with good thoughts. Like that's something that I don't know if this is going to make sense, but not focusing on getting rid of the bad thoughts, but focusing more on adding in the good ones, adding in the affirmations, adding in more things that make you happy, like spending time with people you love, doing things that keep you busy, that keep you distracted from like, oh, I don't like this about myself. Like, if we can keep ourselves busy doing what we love, there's so much less time to think about what we don't have, what we don't love, what we're missing out on. So, I think that that's probably my biggest tip is just kind of adding in more of what's good and what's bad will kind of diminish itself, but also just remembering all the time that you come from this is one thing that helps me a lot when it comes to like being physically insecure, whether it's my body, my face, whatever it is. I just remind myself that I come from this line of the most beautiful DNA from who knows what year, how long ago. There's parts of my DNA from then that are still within me now. And it's just such a beautiful way of looking at life, like recognizing that I am my mother, I am my grandma, I am my great grandma, and my great 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 grandma that I've never even got to meet. And that just brings me this kind of peace, this kind of comfort that I am meant to be unique. We're not all supposed to look the same. We're not all supposed to have the same body, the same eyes, the same anything. So remembering that helps me a lot in the moments of doubt and insecurity. And then also, same goes for doubt and insecurity in my career or in my journey or with where I'm at in life. It's so important to remember that everybody's on a different chapter in a different book. Like it's really easy to get in our heads when we're consuming, you know, my best friend just graduated with her master's and she's 23 somehow. She did that. And I have another friend who's married with 2 kids, and I have friends traveling the world. And when we're constantly consuming all of that, it's really easy to view ourselves as somebody who's like, oh, well, I haven't done that yet. And I'm like, well, yeah, I haven't done that yet because I'm not a nurse. So I'm not going to have my master's in nursing. You know what I mean? And it's just, we're all in a different chapter in a different book. And where you're at right now is exactly where you're supposed to be. And I definitely took that to 17 different stations, but that would be my I guess 20 million tips.
Oh my gosh, no, you just said so many good things that I'm like, whoa, I want to like hold on to each of these. So, first of all, I love that idea of when you look in the mirror, and so many of us, I'd go so far as to say all of us at some point or another are looking in the mirror and thinking, ugh, I hate this part of me. I need to lose weight. I need to change this part. My nose is ugly. This part's ugly. Like we're so used to looking in a mirror and picking apart every single thing. And I've heard so many women say, when they had a child, they felt differently because obviously your body does crazy shit. Like it's incredible
Hmm.
what a woman's body can do, but also because when you see your children and they have so many of these features that you have picked apart in yourself for so many years, you love it in a different way. But
I
I
just
love
got
this tip.
goosebumps. Wait, I really loved that. That was
Isn't
so
that
cute.
beautiful?
Yeah, I
It's
don't
like,
know if I've ever
and I'm
heard
like,
it.
it totally makes sense to me. How could you look at your kid who has the freckles that all your life you're like, I hate my freckles. I wish I didn't have freckles.
Story of my
And
life.
you have the most perfect little being that you love so much have these freckles. How could you ever again look in the mirror and say you don't like your freckles? And
Mhm.
and so I think that that's such a powerful experience for
Yeah,
a lot of people, but I've never heard it on the flip side of, oh, but those eyebrows that you think are too bushy or that you hate, those came from your mom and your mom got those from her mom and her mom and her mom and her mom. And it's like this, how could you possibly look in a mirror and hate when you have this awareness of this is where I came from? Like these are the
mhm,
parts of me that come from people I love and also
yeah.
a legacy and generations that I don't even know.
And
Like
then I
that's
get
such
to
a beautiful
continue.
way.
I get to continue that too. And it's so much easier said than done because I know that the world we live in pushes so many different beauty standards that change quite literally every single week. So it's impossible to keep up. And I understand that. But another thing I always remind myself of is that most of the insecurities that we have that are physical are really temporary. Like my whole childhood, my biggest insecurity was my freckles. I have makeup on, like, I don't know if I can see them on camera, but like, I got a lot of freckles and I used to hate them. People would make fun of them all through elementary school. People would make fun of the size of my eyes because they'd be like, you look like an ugly little cat. Like it looks like, you want to hear the craziest thing ever? I had somebody tell me in elementary school, this is so beyond wild, that my face looked like I took a diarrhea and it splashed in my face. And that's what my freckles looked like. So
You're
I,
kidding.
no, I swear. I tell people that and they're like, I don't believe it. I'm like, you think I could make that up? I couldn't even come up with something like that hard of a roast if I tried. But for so long, the two things I hated the most about myself were my freckles and my eyes. And as the years have gone on, my freckles and my eyes have become my two favorite features of myself. And same goes for my eyebrows. Like they used to be really thick, middle school, I hated them. Now I absolutely love them. And it just goes to show that like the things that we spend so long picking apart and wishing that weren't a part of us tend to be the things we end up loving the most. So I always remind myself of that in new insecurities. Like, I was looking at my body the other day and I'm like, oh, I don't really like these like little love handles I have going on. And I know in a few years, I'll be so grateful for them and I'll appreciate them. And I just remind myself that all of those feelings are temporary and it helps me love myself a little bit more in those moments.
Oh, that's so good. That's so true because when we're especially going in school and kids are assholes,
Oh my
we're
gosh.
used to thinking they're the worst. Kids are
Dude,
the
elementary
worst.
school was a time. In middle school too, I feel like high school it kind of calms down. People aren't as like upfront, but in middle school and elementary school, the boys would come up to you and just be like, "You're so ugly. You're going to be single for your whole life." And I'm like, "Oh, period." You let them know. Like that they're just ruthless when we're young. I guess we all were, but I was never that mean.
No. Okay, do you abide by the how people will say, oh, boys are mean to you because they like you? What are your thoughts on this?
Dude, so when I was younger, for sure in elementary, I mean, I heard this my whole life because I think that when we were younger, like boys who were mean to us actually did like us. Like that was almost always true. But I think the older and more mature we get, like we really have to detach from that mindset because I know in high school, because people always said that to me in elementary school, middle school, I thought in high school, like I should like the bad guys or the mean guys. And like I got played of quite a few times. And I like, just would let it happen and I'd be like, no, but he's a good guy and I'm his favorite. Like I know he's like talking to all these other girls and hooking up with all these other girls, but I must be his favorite. And meanwhile, every other girl he's talking to thinks the same thing. So I fell for that a lot in high school. And I think it was around college that I started to recognize like I don't actually want somebody who's mean to me. Like I want to be around people who make me happy. And I think that the person I like should have a crush on should also make me feel like they're the one that has a crush on me. Like I think we need to let go of this idea and this stereotype and this mindset that we should go for the bad guys, because I think it's still really common, like more common than we think. And I think that's because, again, it's what we've grown up with our whole entire life. Like we don't know that there's anything else out there, but I know that there is now, which is a crazy thing to say. Like I always thought I was going to be single forever because boys are just garbage. But like there's some really, really good people out there who will actually love you and respect you the way that you deserve. So I'm now team nice guy for life, team nice partner, whatever it may be. But I think that the people that are mean just have some more inner work to do, because when we actually want something or someone, we don't treat them like we don't respect them, you know? And I just like to refer to like myself. If somebody's treating me the way that I would never treat somebody, I'm like, maybe I don't want that person to be in my close circle, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, I'm so glad you went off on that because it's so true. It's one of the things that like really bugs me still because it's still true where I see that stereotype of like, oh, when boys are mean, it's because they like you. That yes, might have been
Mhm.
true when you're 7 years old because the boys
Yeah.
are uncomfortable, which we should be working on that as a culture.
Yeah,
Boys
I'm like,
should
we
be
really need to, if
comfortable.
we really were thinking here, we need to go all the way back there and start
We can
changing it.
go
But since we
back.
can't do that
Yeah.
yet, let's start like high school, middle
That's
school.
right. Yes. Yes. We'll start there. We'll start with like what we can control. But then when we
Mhm.
hear that, oh, the boy's mean to me, that means he likes me. Then yes, exactly what you're saying. Then it gets this in our heads of like, oh, mean equals good. Mean equals he
Yeah,
likes me. And how fucked up is that? But then
exactly.
also I think it like puts us on this path of, oh, now there's a challenge of like, oh, he
Mhm.
likes me. I want to
How do I get him to
uncover.
like me the most? And it's just
Exactly.
so crazy
Exactly.
that we do that. It blows my mind because I just know how much I did it. And now being on the other side where I am with somebody who respects me and loves me more than anything in the world, I'm like, why did I put up with that? I deserved this love all along, but I never believed that I did. And I think that part of the reason that was because I hadn't gone to a point where I, like we were talking about earlier, I didn't know myself fully, nor did I love myself fully. And I think that once you really, really get to that point, you stop letting a lot of things happen to you. You stop letting people walk all over you as much, even into like, I'd say the past 2 years is when I really did this growth where I recognized, like, you know what, even this friend, even the thing that this person says to me or about other people, that's not really somebody that I should keep around because that doesn't make me feel good. And I would never make somebody else feel that way. And like that only happened because I got to a point where I loved myself enough to stand up for myself. And that's a really hard thing to do because when we're around people who constantly bring us down, put us down, you start to believe what people say, no matter how crazy it is. Like a lot of times with my Instagram DMs, like if somebody says the same thing enough times, I start to believe it, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Like what people tell you, who you surround yourself with, makes you feel a certain way about yourself. So I encourage everybody to keep the good people around. Kind of took that away from the boys on accident, but same idea.
You can take
Friendships,
it away from the boys. The boys have had their time.
they had their
We can
moment.
take it away.
No, but I do encourage everybody to just recognize how valuable you are and how wonderful you are and how much you truly do deserve to be treated right by whatever that partner may be, whoever it may be. Make sure it's somebody who respects you and makes you feel like good. Simply put, the person that you're talking to, with, flirting with, should make you feel good, you know?
Mm. Mhm. So good. It's so true. And like you said, that also goes for friendships. I think it also goes for
Mhm.
family members. You know, it
Yep.
goes for everybody in your life. How did you build that confidence where you got to the place where you're like, oh, I actually can select the people that deserve a spot in my life?
Yeah, so I've been blessed with pretty good people in my life. Like my best friend and I have been best friends since I was 5 years old. And I'm not talking like, oh, we're just childhood besties. Like me and this girl are inseparable. Me and Lisetta, we've been friends for 18 years now, and we spend every living second together until she just actually moved like a year ago. And it's been really, really sad. Like I didn't expect my body to go through such an adjustment period of withdrawals, but like becoming long distance best friends with your best friend is one of the worst adulthood things I've ever had to experience. And I feel like I've been through some shit, so it says a lot. But yeah, so where was I going with that? Basically, I've always had really good friendships in my life, and I've been lucky to be surrounded by such good people. But there was a time right after college. Well, I was still in college, but I wasn't really taking classes. It was like my pause on college, which I never pressed play. I'm still on pause. But I stopped doing college for about a year, and I was living out in Hawaii, and I was just kind of starting to recognize that I wasn't feeling so good. I wasn't really feeling like myself. I couldn't really find my sparkle. I couldn't be myself. And I didn't really recognize why. And a lot of the people that I was surrounding myself with there, some of them still my greatest friends to this day. Like I met really wonderful people while I was living over there, but I was also surrounding myself with people who didn't want other people to ever be themselves. Like I was surrounded by people who made me feel very small and made me feel very embarrassed when I wanted to be, this is like sounds so silly, but like when I wanted to be silly or goofy or cringy, like I don't like to be shut down for enjoying life and having fun and being weird once in a while. Like that sounds very silly, but you know what I mean. And the people that I was with would just make me feel like shit about myself 24/7. And I think that that's really when I recognized, hey, I'm losing myself because of the way that these people make me feel about myself. And I think that that's a very clear sign for anybody to evaluate what your friendships are, what you're surrounding yourself with, because kind of like I was just saying, if you surround yourself with people enough that make you, that say, oh, you're so annoying, whether it's true or not, and it's not true because none of us are, um, you're going to believe it. And then you're going to start to lose that sparkle. And keeping that sparkle alive is the most important thing. It's how we heal our inner child. It's how we feel motivated to chase our passions, because that sparkle is the thing that keeps igniting us. So the second that you are surrounded by people who dim that purposely, sometimes it's unintentional. Sometimes you just have to have a genuinely honest conversation with this friend and be like, hey, I'm feeling like this. Let's talk about it. And if that friend wants to make a change, it shows that that friend really does care about you. But a lot of times they'll be like, what? I don't do that. You're being so dramatic. That kind of response tells you everything you need to know. But the second that you stop feeling like you when you're surrounding yourself by certain people is when you should evaluate those friendships, because that's what did it for me. I got to a point, and I wish I didn't let it go on for so long. Like I really just let myself get shut down, pushed down, shoved to the ground for months and months and months. And I just kind of broke. And I was like, I'm done. And I just stopped talking to those people pretty much completely. And sometimes you just got to do that. You just have to walk away from the things that aren't serving you once in a while, because sometimes it's not even worth your energy to try to change people that aren't going to change. That's my TED Talk.
It's so good. It's so impressive because it is so hard to identify that for a lot of people. It's hard to know this is when a relationship is no longer
Yeah.
serving me, because we are so used to making excuse after excuse for people. It's so easy to be like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they don't make me feel good, or they said this mean thing, but they're a lot of fun, or but we've
Yeah.
known each other for so long. Like people have all these reasonings. So I actually love what you just said about the sparkle. I think that's such a good barometer of asking yourself, checking in with every relationship. Is this person trying to dull my sparkle? Does my sparkle go away when they're around? Or are they like livening up the sparkle? Are
Yeah.
they re-sparking the sparkle? I
Mm-hmm.
think that like that is such a good explanation to allow us to like check in of like, is this a relationship really worth continuing or not?
Yeah, because I did the same thing. My whole life was somebody, I let people walk all over me, whether it was like serious things or small things. Like I love people. I trust people, less so now because I feel like unfortunately, we lose a little bit of that trust as more things happen to us. Like my open doors kind of close a little bit, but for so long in my life, I was just open to anyone and everyone and everything, and I constantly gave people the benefit of the doubt. So the same thing happened for me. I would justify people's mistakes and actions, and also because I love people, and I know 99% of the time people are only unkind to others or judgmental to others because of what they have going on internally. So I would like give people that justification constantly. But I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I understand that maybe they're going through something that makes them project this onto me, but that doesn't mean I should be losing myself in the process. So that's where it's sometimes best to just don't spark anything up, don't start a fight, just let it drift into what it was meant to be all along, you know? Some friendships are healthier from afar than they are close knit, and sometimes they're just better off to just let it dim, let that fade, because that's really just the key thing. If you don't feel like you, it's not worth watering.
It's so true. It's so true. Something else that I am so impressed by with you is how open you are about your mental health on Instagram and TikTok. And it's so impressive because I feel like most people are not even that vulnerable with their close friends. And you have been so, I know, helpful in like allowing people to feel seen in your story. I feel like mental health is something that the more we share our stories, the more other people feel healed because
Hmm.
seeing themselves in us in someone else who has similar experiences is part of the healing process. So I have like loved watching the content that you produce on this. What inspired you or kind of like was that aha moment that allowed you to be like, "Whoa, I'm having a moment right now. I want to share it on TikTok."
Yeah, there's actually kind of so many reasons that I started talking about mental health and being vulnerable on the internet. And it's so funny you say, like, so many of us can't even have those conversations with the people that are close to us. I can't either, which is the most wild thing. Like, my boyfriend is really the one person I can open up to about, and because we live together. So, like, I can't hide my breakdowns or my like crazy moments from him because he just sees every part of me. So, he's the one person I can really open up to. Him and the internet, which is just wild. But it all started because I first struggled with my mental health when I was in eighth grade and I was 13. I'd never heard the word depression. I never heard the word anxiety. What the heck was social anxiety? All I knew is that I felt physically ill. And I've told this story like a few times, but every time I retell it, it just is crazy to think about because there was no conversations about like, oh, maybe I should try therapy. Maybe I should meditate. Maybe I should, go outside and take a walk because all I knew was that my physical effects were so strong from what I was going through mentally that I was getting acupuncture. I got a colonoscopy because I thought I was dying of some internal illness. And the real cause was just I was a little depressed and I was really, really socially anxious. And I was dealing with a really big mean girl. And like she was just horrible to me. So basically, long story short, I was getting bullied really bad in eighth grade, caused me to spiral into this deep, dark depression and anxiety. Acupuncture, doctors, all of it, never thought about therapy. My parents either. It just wasn't a conversation because I didn't even recognize, like, oh, I'm sad and this person makes me feel sad and going to school makes me feel nervous. I didn't know how to articulate those thoughts or feelings whatsoever. So one day, I just happened to randomly go to yoga with my mom, and she was going consistently just for like the physical benefits. Like yoga was great, kept us all in shape. But I went with her, and this yoga class like changed my life. I went in there not understanding what I was feeling, not understanding my thoughts. I didn't love myself. I literally hated myself because people convinced me that I should. I saw the world in black and white, and I use this analogy a lot. Like I walked out of that yoga class and I saw the world in color again because throughout the class, like, yes, we're doing this physical activity, but there was so much conversation around mindfulness and your mindset. And the way that we think is the way that we feel. And I had never heard those things or had those conversations. Nobody told me, like, hey, why don't you just think about what you're feeling and shift it around a little bit? Nobody even, that wasn't a conversation at all. So basically, I leave this yoga class and I'm like, Mom, I'm going to teach yoga. She's like, girl, you're 13. Okay, let's do it. My mom's always been my biggest fan and like my number one supporter. I love her with my whole entire heart. So she helped me call like 10 different yoga studios. We finally found one willing to take me into their program. And the reason I wanted to teach yoga was because of this one experience that made me feel so completely different about myself and the world. I wanted to share that with other people my age because there was so much hate on yoga. Like when I started telling people I was doing it, like I got shit on for it all over again. People were like, you're doing yoga? That's so weird. That's for hippies and stuff. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but it's also for everybody. Like we could all benefit from it. So I'm making this story so long, but basically, I started teaching yoga so that I could start having those conversations around mental health with people my age and younger. And I taught yoga and I shared a lot of the things I share now, but in a completely different way. I shared it through the practice of yoga. And now, as my life has gone on, I've just become so passionate about helping other people understand their feelings. And sometimes, like, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. Like I can't sit here and be a doctor to anybody, but I can sit here and be like a friend or a sister or somebody to somebody, whatever that may be. And at first it was really hard to get open on the internet because I would have like cousins of cousins text me and be like, "Are you okay? Like, is everything okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just in a moment. It's going to pass. Like, we all have these things and they all pass, but why not talk about them?" So I kind of, for the first few times I would make videos, whether it was crying on the internet or just being like really honest about these deep, scary, dark feelings that we have sometimes, it took me a while. But what continues to inspire me to be so open is the comments and the feedback, and just seeing how many people are like, wait, I didn't even know that I needed to hear this, but this made me feel so seen or so validated. And I'm talking like down to the little things, like being a girl and throwing a fit because you don't like what your outfit looks like. That's like not something we talk about, but it is something real because it can sometimes spiral us, and it's human for that to happen. So when I see other girls or other people in general be like, "Hey, this really helps me today," I'm like, well then let's do it again the next time we need to. Like, I just want to be a person to somebody. And it just keeps me going, knowing that there's people out there that are benefiting from it. And now it's also become such an outlet for me. Like, I feel validated when I post something and I'm like, I know this is crazy, but hear me out. And everybody's like, no, the same thing happens to me, or I go through the same thing. I'm like, wow, so we're really all in this together. And now we're like this team that validates each other. And long story short, I just love it. And I'm passionate about it. And I will openly share whatever I need to on the internet if it helps us all feel a little bit better.
Yeah. So it seems like even from the time you were 13 and wanting to go to yoga classes and share this and help people, it really seems like a huge piece of your healing was in the ability to help other people. And I say that
100%.
because I think that like anyone out there who is struggling, I'm not saying quit your job and like become Gandhi and travel the world and whatever. I just mean sometimes it is being, whoa, I'm struggling. Anyone else out there struggling too? Going to
Yeah.
your friend and being like, have you ever felt this? Like, I'm feeling this, because that's going to open up to them. Oh, I can share too. And that I think is like the healing piece that we don't talk about. Like, I love how much
100%.
we talk about therapy. Like, that's amazing. Now we're talking about therapy way more than when you were 13 and had no idea
Mhm.
to look there. But I think that it's like so much self-improvement, and self-healing is amazing. But the piece that we're not talking about it enough is that there's also like community healing that needs to happen in order for self-healing. And
Yeah.
that's a huge piece of it.
It's just starting the conversation, because it is so true that so many of us are going through the same exact things. And that doesn't have to mean you have to get on the internet and talk about your deep, dark secrets. It just means asking your friend if they, like you said, if your friend, if they feel similar, because 90% of the time, like, we do, like, we have a lot of the same root feelings, and they might, show up differently in our lives. They might show up as different actions for some of us, but like a lot of the root feelings are the same. And when we can get to the bottom of those feelings, it helps us heal a lot quicker from them. And even with my boyfriend, I think that's something we've really integrated into our relationship, is like, if we get in a fight over something stupid, like, let's just figure out what caused it, because 99% of the time the fight isn't actually because I forgot to buy strawberries at the grocery store. It's because he told me a while ago how much he loves strawberries, and it's just usually something deeper and deeper and deeper. And when we can just communicate that and talk about that, it helps us be kinder to other people, kinder to ourselves, understand ourselves a little bit more. And in a way, this all goes back to that first conversation, like knowing yourself. The more you know yourself, the more you can work through anything that life hands you. But yeah,
Mhm.
basically, community is really key, and just starting the conversations with the people around you and being open about like the really root causes of things is so,
Mhm.
so, so key.
What else has helped you with your mental health journey, whether it was like long term, things that you've tried that over time worked, or when you're in a
Mm.
moment where you're like, oh, I'm struggling right now, what you do to pull yourself out of it?
Yeah, so it depends on the moment. Like, there's certain moments where I really feel out of control, where I can sit down, I can journal, I can pray, I can read my Bible, I could do yoga, I could do a meditation, I could call my therapist, I could hug my best friend, and none of those things would pull me out of the moment. Like, there's times where it's just like that. But no matter what, I think we need to just keep watering the grass and trying all of the things, because what works for one person might not work for another person. Like, I love to what do I love? I love to do a lot of things. But like, if somebody says to me like, "Oh, you need to go work out to feel better." Like, that actually does the opposite for me. That gets my heart rate going too much. I get more anxiety, and that doesn't pull me out of a dark place almost anytime. And I've tried it. So we all are going to have different things that work for us. But like one thing I really lean towards is journaling when it comes to my mental health, because so many reasons. One, I've been journaling since 2021. So if I am having a moment, a lot of times I'll go read my past journal entries and like reflect. I'm like, wait, was I thinking the same? Was I in the same mindset cycle the last time I was feeling this kind of feeling? And I'll just reflect on who I once was and then reflect on who I want to become. And I'll just write. Like I will write about all of the crazy thoughts that are happening in me, because I'm such a strong believer that we have to get the things that are consuming us in our mind, we have to get them out. And if we don't get them out, whether that's through talking to somebody or writing it, or yeah, those two, it's going to stay in there and it's just going to keep eating at you. So my biggest thing is just getting that out, whether it's screaming it to myself, setting up my phone and talking to my phone, writing it in my journal, calling my best friend. You have to get it out. You have to get it out in some way, shape, or form. But a lot of times the things we need to get out are the deepest and the darkest ones. So that's why I think journaling is really my big secret. That's the big thing I love to do the most when I'm really in a moment.
Yeah, because it does release so much,
Yeah.
like you're literally letting it out. So
Hmm.
I see how that's so effective. I also love something that you said earlier having to do with confidence and thoughts of like the don't worry so much about changing the thought, but adding something.
Hmm.
I kind of feel like that's been helpful for me with mental health is like if you're not feeling good, it's so easy for us to be like, ah, let me get out of this. I hate feeling this. I want to stop feeling this.
Hmm.
And then in that way, we kind of like make the suffering worse. So instead
Oh
of
yeah.
thinking, let me stop feeling this, let me add something that makes me feel good. Like, let me just like allow myself to feel, and I'm going
Uh-huh.
to feel my feelings. But then what's something I can add? Like, is it going
Exactly.
for a walk? Is it getting outside? Is it journal? Is it whatever? Is it calling my friend? What is going to make you feel good and add that instead of being so hyper focused on like, let
Yeah.
me get out of this feeling ASAP.
I do the same thing when it comes to like food, for example. Like it's so many people are like, "Oh, I'm going to just stop eating sugar. I'm going to just stop eating carbs. I'm going to just completely restrict and limit myself," when people get into like diet culture. But what is proven to happen is the more that you restrict yourself, the more likely you are to go back to the things that you've been cutting out of your life completely. And I view mental health the same way. Like if you just don't let yourself feel anything, like we were saying earlier, and like we all pretty much know this, the more you keep things in, the more they build up and the more likely it's going to hurt more the next time you have to go through something. So yeah, just don't, not restricting yourself from your feelings, but adding more in so that those other ones get kind of pushed to the side, because it
Mhm.
really does help. And I don't even know how that ever came into my brain, but it's been a good one, a good tip for
Yeah.
sure.
That's genius. Like the add instead of subtract in everything in your life is so huge. I
It's
love
just,
that.
it comes so much of the things that we experience in life comes to our mindset. Like I think 90% of the things that we go through, whether that's how we view relationships, how we view our relationship with our body, our confidence, our mental health, whatever it is, it's all in our mindset. Like we have a lot more power than we recognize. And that's not going to, stop me from having an anxiety attack every month or whatever it may be. But the more that you can teach your mind to work through things and perceive them differently, the more quickly you're going to get through whatever it is. Like we have so much power. We just don't recognize it a lot of the time.
Ugh, that's so good. That's so good. I want to pivot to your relationship. I know you've mentioned it. How long have you and your boyfriend Gabe been together?
So Gabe and I have known each other actually for 6 years. Like I have a best friend. My mom's best friend was pregnant at the same time as her. So I've had this childhood friend since I was literally straight out the womb. His name is Jake. So Jake is also best friends with Gabe, and they've been best friends since high school. So Gabe and I went to rival high schools. We always would go to the same parties. Gabe used to always tell Jake, like, you've got to put me on with Lexi. Like, I want to talk to, this is when we were like 17. Well, I was 17, he was probably 18. So it's crazy to think about, but I was always like, no, no, no. Like I'm just not. I've also always been really independent in the sense of like I don't need no man. So I was just like, whatever, I'm not interested. And then I went to one of his parties. He threw a party in high school and we kissed. And I was like, Oh my gosh, just like a drunk, like high school, not encouraging underage drinking whatsoever. But like at the time, that's what was going on. And we kissed and then we never spoke about it. And like we would still like see each other at parties sometimes. We never really talked other than that. And then I went to visit my best friends in college. And Gabe's a school year older than me. So is my best friend Lisette. So is my best friend Jake. So I was a senior in high school. I went to go visit them and we kiss again, like at the club. And that was it. Like nothing ever further than that. But like at this point, we were just friends. And there was always this like mutual tension between us where we like kind of liked each other, but also I had no interest in anything further. But it was so funny because in college, every night that he would get like too drunk, he would come and bang on me and my roommate's door and sleep on our couch. Like he always would come to my room, which is crazy because like nothing ever happened. Nothing, there was no conversations. We had just kissed and that was it. And I knew he had a crush on me. So that was what, 5 years ago or something now. And like we kissed a couple times after that before we were dating, I think. It was just what happened. But he would, anytime I would be talking to another guy at the bar in college, he would just leave. So this has been there's been an invisible string the whole time.
Oh
And
my
he's put the work
God.
in. There's a video he sent to me from my best friend's phone because again they were in college when I was still in high school at home, and he was like, Lexi, I'm gonna kiss you one day. This was in 2018. I'm gonna kiss you one day. I know you're gonna reject me, but it's gonna happen. And he was right. But anyways, fast forward, we worked together a little bit over the summers, but like nothing ever really happened. Nothing progressed. We were kind of friends. We would like Snapchat occasionally, see each other out. Never had like a direct friendship, the two of us. It was all just mutual circle. But always that underlying tension. And fast forward to the time he graduates college, we're all living back home in Boca. The whole friend group is kind of reuniting. I end up out one night. He's out with his friends, and it's just crazy because I never go out anymore. And then I didn't either, but I just happened to go out this night and he happened to be out and we happened to be at the same place. Neither of us were drinking that night and we just were catching up and we were just talking. And I had been going to the beach every morning to watch the sunrise. And he's like, I want to come with you one day. And I'm like, yeah, 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 for sure. Like, we'll plan that, knowing I was never going to reach out to him to do that. But then my best friend Lisette also has always wanted us to be together. Like I'm talking since 2018. She's like, you guys are the same person. I don't know why you don't just get together. And I always was like, girl, you're crazy. But she's like, you have to invite him. Let's just the three of us go. Because I can't do anything alone. I don't go on dates, nothing. So we all go to Sunrise. She ends up convincing me. We go to Sunrise. We come back to the house. We're all hanging out. He's a personal trainer. So he goes, why don't you guys come to the gym tonight and let's work out? So we go to the gym, we work out, and it becomes this thing that we start to call Wacky Wednesday. So every Wednesday, sunrise, coffee, hang out, workout. And we did this for like a month. And I was like telling my best friend, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad Gabe and I are just finally friends. Like there's no more weirdness between us. Literally the day after I send that, she texts, or Gabe reaches out and he's like, hey, can we go on a date? I want to take you mini golfing. And I'm like, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. And I said yes because I didn't want to ruin this like friendship thing we had going on. And like our routine was so fun. Working out at the gym was so fun. But it took everything in me to say yes. And it took everything in me to go on this date. Like Lissa had to be over before I went. My best friend Meredith flew into town for me to like be able to mentally prepare because I have really bad social anxiety, especially when it comes to like a date kind of thing. Anyways, I'm making the story so long. We go on this date and the rest was history. And he's been literally the biggest blessing and angel in my life ever since. But it's been a long time coming. And now I just love him. I love him so much.
Oh my God, that's such a good story. That is such a good story. What was it that made you so resistant? Was it the social anxiety that you're like, I don't want to like seriously date people?
Yeah, so this is actually something I've struggled with for a really long time. And it's something I've wanted to like maybe do a podcast about at some point too, or find the right way to talk about it. But a really big thing for me was I think I didn't love myself fully. So I didn't think that once somebody saw the full me, they would love me because I didn't love me. So I think part of it was like a deeper rooted fear of rejection. But a really big thing for me was that I was terrified of intimacy, not just physically, but also emotionally, but even physically. Like through high school, through college, was never with anybody seriously because it scared me more. And I say now, I'm like, oh, it's because like I respected myself so much that I didn't want anybody to come near me. But like the reality of it was I was just scared. I was scared to be so intimate with somebody in any way. And that was a huge thing for me when it came to boys in general and going on dates and like talking to them and starting these relationships. Like I was just so scared that I would run so far from anything that had potential because of this fear. And now I know it was God's plan. He didn't want me with anybody except Gabe. Um, and I'm so glad about that. But like, I was just so scared and I didn't know myself and I wasn't secure enough in myself to be able to like go on a date. I would always think that my brain would turn off and I wouldn't know what to talk about. But I think when it's the right person, those feelings really do diminish and you just kind of can let yourself go. And that's not to say it happened right away for me. Like, I think the first 4 months that Gabe and I were even official, I was still so scared of so many things and so many conversations. And I think around like the 4 month mark is when I finally just took a deep breath and like let my wall down. And I'm like, wait, he actually loves the parts of me that I don't love yet. Like, that's insane. I didn't know that anybody could. I didn't know what it felt like to be loved unconditionally. And once you are, you can let your guard down so much. And it's a really beautiful experience. But really it was just fear and social anxiety. And I encourage anybody who's kind of in that same boat to just really trust your gut feeling. I think that God pulled me away from certain people for certain reasons. And we have really good intuition, I think, especially as females, to just know what's right for us and what's wrong a little bit. So that's my that's yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I know so many friends, and I've totally been there myself, that do feel that way where they're like, whether it's fear of intimacy, whether it's lack of self-confidence and feeling like you won't truly be loved for who you are, fear of intimacy is really such a huge thing that I feel like people don't talk about enough, but so
Yeah.
many people, especially women, experience all the time,
Yeah.
like this inability to allow people to come in. I know there's also that social anxiety. Like, I don't totally felt that of like being on a date is awkward. Like, it
Oh,
is so
yeah.
fucking
Like,
awkward.
I genuinely get goosebumps. Even when I think about
Yeah.
Gabe and I's first date, I'm like, I don't know how I did that. I could never go back to those feelings. I'm so glad I never have to again in my life, but like they're scary and it's okay for them to be scary, but dude, first dates, mm-mm.
First dates
Nope.
are the worst. They're the worst. They're so
Until you
awkward.
until you're with the right person. Like, if your first date's good, I think it says a lot. It says a
Mhm.
lot, because it's hard to have a good first date. At least maybe that's because I've only been on like two ever in my life, but I don't know. I'm not the right person for date advice because I was locked in from our first one.
Yeah, I feel like that's really good advice though of like trust yourself. Like
Yeah,
if there's a part of you that's saying, "Okay, I'm freaking out. I don't want to be near this person." Don't be. If there's a part of you that's
yeah,
like, "I'm still freaking out, but like wow, I really like to be around this person." Pursue that. Like listen to
yeah.
your gut. I think is
And just
such good
again,
advice.
going back to just getting to the deep feelings, because so much of my surface feelings were like, no, I'm just independent. And that's why I don't want to be around this person. And like the deep feeling in me knew that that's not what it was. It knew it was like me just being insecure and afraid
Mhm.
to let somebody see my insecurities. But the more you can, I keep going back to the same thing. I guess that's like the topic, but knowing yourself is key, because then you just you love yourself a little bit more and you know you deserve all the right things and all the good things.
Yeah. And then I feel like you stop, like something that I definitely used to do in my youth was start telling like like I would identify, and I would do this subconsciously of like a guy would like a certain type of music. I would start liking that type of music.
Yes,
If
this
they
this
liked
is
certain
huge.
movies, like I wasn't telling guys, "Oh, I love Broadway and rom-coms." Like I was trying to do the thing, and it
Yep.
was all subconscious. I wasn't even
Hmm.
realizing. And it wasn't until I met my current boyfriend that the first day I was like, "I'm so annoying. I'm care about being healthy. I'm not like the cool girl that's like, yeah, I eat whatever I want. I love Broadway musicals. I only listen to Broadway and Taylor Swift." Like as soon as I found someone who I was myself with, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I can't believe that all these other times I was doing that where I was identifying what someone liked and then liking that thing. And so
Yeah.
even in that way, I think that we do that a lot.
100%. And I think it's also so important, you're around the right people when you can talk about the things you love and they, maybe I'm a huge Swiftie. Like, and my boyfriend, like, he listened to Taylor Swift for me when we first got together and he had never listened before. And like, he's not, a number one fan now, but he knows that I love it. So he will go out of his way to learn to love it as well without, taking away from the things that he loves. Like, with the right person, you learn to love what each other likes. That was so grammatically incorrect, but you know what I mean. Um,
No, I totally know what
yeah,
you
and I
mean.
think that that's a huge thing, and that's why in high school, like, there were so many people in relationships that kind of stayed in them. And I know a lot of those high school relationships work out really well. And I applaud anybody who goes through all of that. But like, we need to really be alone enough to know ourselves where we can figure out what our own likes are. And like, again, what I was saying earlier, our own values, our own morals. Like, we can't figure that out if we're with somebody from the point that we are so young to when we are so old, because you don't have that time to actually know if it's something that you love or if it's something that you've been convinced to love, if that makes any
Mhm.
sense at all. Like, I think just knowing what you love and being proud of it is so key when it comes to finding the right long-term partner.
Yeah. Because then that's when you attract people who will love you for the you
Yeah.
that you love,
Yeah.
like, which again, the grammar. But
Mhm.
it's different when you know yourself and you enter a relationship knowing yourself,
Yeah.
because then you're finding someone who loves the parts of you that you didn't even know, like you said, could be loved. And that's
Yeah.
what you want. That's what the relationship worth having.
100%. And you also want to make sure you're not with somebody you feel, and this goes same we were just saying with friendships. Like, if you are with a partner who makes you feel like you're losing your sparkle, it's another conversation to have, another thing to think about. A lot of times with a partner, I think it kind of can happen naturally because you just get so intertwined with each other. And Gabe and I had a conversation about this like probably 6 months ago, that it is so important for us to continue pouring into our own lives and our own hobbies, each of our families, each of our friendships. Like, we have to continue to water all of those things to have the strongest relationship possible. And I think that in a lot of new, fresh relationships, it's so easy to lose that. So you kind of can feel like you're losing your sparkle, but sometimes it just has to be a conversation like, okay, hey, wait, I haven't volunteered in months and I used to volunteer 3 times a week. Like, why don't I introduce that a little bit more? And, not sure where I was going with that, but hopefully it was something.
Yeah. What are some other of those, like whether it's like a ritual or routine or just different pieces of advice that you can share with our audience that have helped you and Gabe have like the healthiest relationship possible?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, another really cliche saying, all the things they say are so true. It's crazy. Like, I never believed them. But like, communication, being so open with each other from the day that we first got together, we've been good at communicating. But especially, I feel like every single day now, we grow in the ways that we communicate with each other. Like, don't get me wrong, any relationship, you're going to argue. You're going to have stupid fights. Like, Gabe and I fight over the dumbest things sometimes. And we'll just like be arguing and I'll just go, I love you. And he'll go, I love you more. And then we'll just kind of pause and like we just start dumping. I'm like, no, but I feel this way because I'm being mean to you because I'm feeling really insecure right now. And I don't want to go to this event because I'm having really bad social anxiety. And he's like, oh, why didn't you just say that? And then we just can kind of like move forward in such a healthy way because we recognize that our feelings and our actions and our behavior towards each other sometimes when it's unkind is because we're just feeling something deeper. And like, the second that we bring that to the surface, that's the second we can meet each other with compassion and with grace and with so much more love instead of anger. Like, fight every argument one as a team. Like, you guys are always on the same team. If you're with the right partner, you're going to want to have the same end goal. If you're with somebody who only wants to argue just for the sake of winning the argument, that's something to either evaluate or have a conversation about. Because Gabe and I always know, no matter what the fight is, the goal is us together against there's a saying, it's us against the problem, not us against each other. And it's so key. Like, communicate about what the deeper root is, know that you're on the same team, continue to learn about each other and make time for each other. I think making sure that you are with somebody you can have fun with and like making the time to be goofy with the person that you're with, like spend quality time together, brush your teeth together. Um, so many little things. But I think the deepest thing is just being able to openly communicate and being able to understand what makes your partner feel loved. Like, I am somebody who needs, when I have these little anxiety attacks, even though there's nothing wrong with my relationship, I get really doubtful and I need a lot of reassurance. And Gabe knows that. And he meets me with so much kindness and so much understanding, even though he can't physically put himself in my shoes. He cannot understand the spiral of thoughts happening in my mind. But I communicate to him. I'm like, hey, I could use some of this. And he goes above and beyond to meet me with that in the best way that he can. And I think that that's really key for your partner to want to do that for you and for you to want to do that for your partner. Like, a huge tip is to just for me at least, one thing I love about our relationship is we always make each other the priority. And that doesn't mean losing ourselves, but it means constantly working to be better for one another helps us be such a better team. And I feel like I just said a million things, but I've learned a lot from being in a healthy relationship. It's crazy because I never knew that there was like a love out there that could exist in this way, but it can, and it's beautiful. But you have to be able to want to be that person for each other. And if you
Yeah.
don't, that's where I feel like a lot of issues come in.
Yeah, totally. Have you heard that saying that it's like after a certain point when you're having a disagreement, like after the first initial, like that was annoying what you just did, after you have like that initial like 1 minute conversation, any disagreement, any fight after that is like both of your inner children trying to fight for what they needed as
Oh
children.
my
And
gosh.
so, right, isn't
Here
that
comes
powerful?
again. You've done this
So
like
it's
3 times today.
but I to me that was so helpful because it's like it's not about it's kind of like the way to effectively communicate is getting yourself out of the like, okay, I want my feelings to be heard. I want to be heard. I
Mhm.
want to be heard. And it's kind of switching yourself out of that like fight or flight response you get into
Yeah.
and then shifting into the, okay, what can I do? What does their inner child need?
Mhm.
And it also requires, like you're saying, them to think about what your inner child needs. And if you
Yeah.
both can switch into that, that's when you, like you do, have that effective communication. So I think that's smart of you guys to have that almost like cue where it's like, okay, we're realizing we're getting into the fight or flight.
Yeah.
What's the cue that's going to be like, okay, let's remember that we're both just inner children fighting at
Mhm.
this point. So I like what you said when you're like, I love you. And he's like, I love you more. And then that's kind of like the cue that's like, okay, whoa, 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 let's shift out of this fight or flight and
Yeah.
acknowledge that we're just two like inner children trying to be heard.
Yeah.
So let
And
me
like,
understand what you need and they can understand what you need.
yeah, and like we love each other. Like it's simple. What are we fighting about? We love each other and we're going to work to understand each other. And that's like a lot of times we'll have a stupid fight and we won't get super deep about what the root was. But then a few days later, this fight will reignite and we'll go back to the same thing. And like when we recognize that that's a pattern that's happening, that's when we're like, okay, let's figure out what the real root of that stupid argument over the strawberries was, you know? We literally never had an argument about strawberries. I just have them right in front of me, so it's what keeps popping in my head. But sometimes it takes a while to meet each other because it's so important to recognize that you and this individual are completely different people, completely different backgrounds, childhoods. Like you were saying, like there's things that my inner child is not healed from that his might be completely fine from, and vice versa, you know? So I just, where was I going with that? Basically, sometimes it takes a while to get to that understanding, but like really doing your best to communicate with your partner that that's what you guys need, and being with somebody who can recognize that, you know, it's so important. And I think one thing with Gabe too is a lot of men are not necessarily, and females too, all of us, there's certain people who are just not very in tune with their emotions and their deeper rooted feelings. Like same way in middle school, I hated myself and I hated the world because I was struggling with anxiety, social anxiety, and depression. Like, but I didn't know that. And I think that a lot of men are so encouraged for their whole life, their whole childhood, to be tough, to be strong, to be so independent and so, you know, manly, that they're not super in touch with their feelings and their emotions. And I think that as feminine energy, it took me a long time to like get Gabe to open up about the things that he was going through. And every single day of our relationship, he's more and more open. And I think that as somebody in the relationship who is more emotional, like whether that's whoever's listening, you have to like communicate that you want to communicate. Now, I don't know if that makes sense, but like a lot of times men don't know how to. So you have to like, for a while when Gabe and I first got together, I was the one interrogating or like trying to understand what he was feeling. Like I would take his thought of like, no, I'm just jealous, and we would break it down. And he's like, wait, that's why I feel that way. So sometimes you have to spark the conversation and spark that movement. And then eventually you grow together in this communication. Like I sometimes tell people the conversations that Gabe and I will have and how like, you know, intimate and deep and vulnerable they are. And they're like, my boyfriend would never talk about those things. And I'm like, for a long time, Gabe wouldn't either. It just takes time to really build that comfort with one another where you can have those conversations. So I think that if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, like that's really cool. Like I wish I could have those conversations. Sometimes you just have to give it time. And I think in some relationships it takes 2 months, and in some relationships it takes 2 years. And like half the time, I don't even think my parents have the right emotional conversations. And like a lot of us don't in relationships because it's not, I don't think it's talked about enough. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think
spiral.
that's so true. Yeah. A lot of times, like, people are taught, especially like in our generation as younger kids, we're taught, like, be a man, toughen
Yeah.
up, rub some dirt in it. Like, big girls don't cry. Like, women are
Hmm.
taught that too. So I think it is like this learning,
Yeah,
unlearning, really more so of like, and
exactly.
that sometimes takes time, but in a safe relationship, that's like the beauty of it is that you
Hmm.
can unlearn these walls so that you can be vulnerable and help heal each other.
110%.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think that when you start to notice that, you really can start to recognize if you're with the right person or not. Like one thing that I saw it on TikTok not that long ago. It was like when someone does you dirty, like ask yourself if that's something your future husband would do. And I was like, damn, period, that's like really, really good. And I loved that because we really do all deserve the world and somebody to respect us. And again, sometimes you have to communicate things. Like Gabe didn't know that girls liked flowers until I showed him this one TikTok one time. And now he hand makes me bouquets at least like every couple of weeks. But he wouldn't know that had I not communicated it. So I know they always say, like, if he wanted to, he would, which is so true. But sometimes he just doesn't know. Sometimes you just have to tell him and then he will. So,
Yeah. It's like if you tell him and then he wanted to, then he would. There
yeah.
has to be like that step in there.
And it's a completely different story. If you have to tell somebody a million times what you love or what you want, then okay, there's a clear pattern. But if it's somebody you tell something to once and they act on it, then that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful person. And I like to encourage us all to also view ourselves in the relationship. There's so much conversation about like, oh, what my partner should do, how my partner should make me feel. Like, how am I making my partner feel? How am I showing up for him? Like, how does he feel loved and how can I make him feel loved? Because he feels loved so much differently than I do. Like, we all have to treat people the way that we would want to be treated. And I think that that makes a relationship so much stronger too, instead of like placing the blame all the time on the other person. I'm
Yeah.
like, sometimes
So
I'm wrong
true.
and dramatic and a brat, and I don't show up for him the way that I should. Like, we all have our flaws, and we just got to learn from them and continue to grow from them.
Mm. That's such amazing relationship advice. Lexi, we're going to wrap up with some rapid fire questions.
Cool.
The first one, best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Oh, you can learn something from everybody. Everybody's got something to teach you. Love that one.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's so good. A number one wellness non-negotiable, something that you do that you swear has made a huge difference in your health.
Definitely journaling, 100%.
Such a good one. If you could summarize the era that you're in one word or phrase, what would it be? Since we love Taylor Swift.
Literally one word or phrase, probably of no, hold on. I know it's rapid fire, but I'm not so rapid
That's
or
okay.
fire.
Take your time.
Probably growth. Like this is just here I go, rambling already. Like just a big season of change for me in the most beautiful turning into an adult kind of way. Like falling in love, renovating a house. Big changes, beautiful ones. But I'm learning a lot about myself along the way. That was
Mm.
not one word or phrase.
That's okay. These never actually end up just being rapid fire.
Ever.
So, but growth is such a beautiful one. I love that. I love that. Last question, a book that changed your life.
Um, I read a book 2 years ago, The Midnight Library, and I was somebody who never did my summer reading. Like I hated reading, but the kid I had a crush on, actually, his mom in like 2020 told me to read this book, and I was like, well, his mom told me to read it, so maybe he'll like it if I read it. Meanwhile, the kid never has read the book. Like he's totally a douchebag too. But I read The Midnight Library, and I absolutely saw my life differently again. Like it resparked my love for reading, it resparked my love for life. And I can't say much more than that, but I encourage everybody who feels like a little bit pulled or torn with where they're at in life. I think that everybody should read it. It's just a really good reminder that we're right where we're supposed to be. So probably The Midnight Library. I think Matt Haig writes it.
Okay, I haven't heard of that, but also
It's
like
good.
how cool. I love when there's like that ex douchebag crush,
Oh my
but you got
gosh.
your favorite book out of
Oh,
that.
it's
Like,
crazy. No, like it's just crazy how even like the horrible guys that we fall for or partners that we fall for like really make us who we are today. Because had I not been treated so horribly, I would not know how that I deserve to be treated how I do now. Like me and my best friend had a crush on the same guy, and we would just be like, okay, well, whichever one of us he actually ends up picking, like that's how it's gonna go. I'm like, that was so horrible. Why did we put each other through that even? Like, why were we allowing that? We still laugh about it to this day. It's insane. But the
oh my
bad ones
God.
always help you get to the good ones. So always
That's
important to
a
remember.
great way to look at it. Yes. The kissing the frogs leads you to the prince.
Exactly. Love that. I'm gonna remember
100%.
that one. That was good.
Hey, Lexi, where can everyone find you? I know you have your podcast, social handles. Give us all the details.
Okay, so a couple things. That was first of all, thank you so much for having me. That was so much fun. I'm so glad we got to chat and do this. And everybody listening, thank you guys for listening. I love you. You could follow me on Instagram, TikTok. I actually just released a guided journal. So I was just saying how much I love journaling, but like a lot of us don't know where to start when it comes to journaling. So I actually wrote these prompts and affirmations back in 2021, and the journal just launched this year, which is wild. But for anybody who doesn't know where to start, but wants to know themselves a little bit better, wants to feel a little bit better, wants to, be able to get to the root of their feelings a little bit more, or just have somewhere to write, I encourage you to buy the Moments Journal. I also have a podcast called Moments where we talk about honestly a lot of things we talked about today. It's fun when it's like a conversation like this, but sometimes I just sit down and record in my room and it's just kind of some advice, some things I'm going through. Varies. It always varies. But yeah, you can find me there. My TikTok and Instagram are Lexi Hidalgo. But yeah, that's I think where you can find me. I'm all over the place most of the time.
Find me somewhere.
Yeah.
Lexi, thank you so much. This was such a fun conversation. I know we even kept you way over time, so I apologize for that.
No,
But
you're
this was
totally
just
fine.
so much fun. You have so much great advice and such a wonderful energy. So thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks everybody for listening too.